future of the automobile may very well center around electric vehicles, but that will first require revolutionary changes in the way car batteries are manufactured. Arirang News' finance correspondent Hwang Ji-hye reports on Industry Insight. LG Chemicals is the #1 company in the electric vehicle battery market. The company recently signed a partnership with France's Renault Motors and announced plans to construct a battery production plant in Nanjing, China. Samsung SDI signed an alliance with Germany's BMW and will supply batteries to the automaker. For electric cars to become popularized, the industry will need to stabilize the supply of energy and durability of parts and keep the vehicles at a practical size. One out of every 20 bank branches have closed down over the past year. Arirang News' reporter Song Ji-sun covered the story. Due to the expansion of online banking and banking via smartphone, banks have been closing down branches. A reduction in the workforce has been seen as well, all due to fewer visits to bank branches by customers. Rather than eliminating bank branches, new measures must be devised that instead reduce the number of workers in each branch. Islamic State militants behead a second American journalist to the horror of the world. The group says they're carrying out the gruesome murders as retaliation against U.S. airstrikes in Iraq. Arirang TV's Foreign Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee brought us this story. In the video clip, the masked militant speaks with a British accent. It's believed to be the same voice heard in the video showing reporter James Foley's murder. The IS militant group threatened to make British national David Haines its next victim. The United States continues to weigh its options in the face of this growing terrorist threat.
Culture Communication Forum, or also known as the CCF 2014, is a forum where different nationalities come together to discuss and exchange cultural affairs. And specifically this year, 16 different representatives from different countries gathered in Seoul to discuss their own cultural affairs and exchange some of the experiences that they were able to have go through in their own country.
Last Sunday, the Culture Communication Forum began with a tour of Dongdaemun Design Plaza. This event is in its 5th year. This year's participants were able to gain a better understanding of Korean history through tours to the National Museum of Korea and Changdeokgung Palace. Various performances were prepared, giving them a sense of true Korean culture. On the 3rd day of the event, a meeting was held at the Westin Chosun. Arirang TV reporter Shin Se-min attended the event from the first day.
시간이 이게 지금 맞아요? 2시까지 2시 반부터 5시까지. 9시 20분에 이제 시작을 하고요. 12시쯤이 점심시간인 거예요.
알겠습니다.
커피 브레이크 때 한번 하시면 좋을 것 같아요.
네, 감사합니다.
The discussion was held under the theme Culture, Mirror and Trigger of Change. Cultural leaders from 16 nations voiced their thoughts and feelings on Korean culture.
조금 들어보고 해야 될 것 같아요. 왜냐면 쓸 거리가 하나도 나오지 않아서 일요일엔 그냥 투어하는 것밖에 없어서.
Se-min finds a seat before the discussion begins. It's not easy to select someone to interview, as there are many participants at this year's forum. She carefully goes over the pamphlet and checks the participants' backgrounds. The event started off with an opening address by Choi Jung-hwa, the president of the Korea Image Communication Institute. An introductory video about the participants was shown first.
This year's forum was under the umbrella of a slogan that says, that basically talks about what brings people to Korea, what draws people in to Korea, which ultimately boils down to the culture that we have. A lot of delegates from different countries with different backgrounds. They all brought in their characteristics to share their knowledge within the field, and they had a discussion on the last day.
저희가 한국도 알리고 각국의 문화를 또 한국에 알리고 서로가 서로의 문화를 이해하는 그러한 소통의 장을 마련한 것입니다. 제5회 CCF를 맞이하여서 훌륭하신 분들께서 참석을 해주신 데 대해서 다시 한번 깊이 감사의 말씀을 드리고
So I think this is a great vehicle.
The participants continue voicing their opinions. Se-min is deep in thought about which comments to use in her story and who she should interview.
Is the relation with our family and how important the cultural elements.
A heated discussion continued between a foreign press member and participants over why it's important to preserve culture.
Korea is developing so fast that very quickly many great historical things are disappearing. I'm also worried about certain places and markets that still exist in Korea, such as the Gongdeok Sijang. There's a market, many traditional markets in Korea are being destroyed very quickly so that they can move them out and build giant construction projects. How do you choose what you preserve?
In the government set us up, the National Trust, under an act of law that separates us from government, but allowed us to take things over tax-free and protect now more land than the Queen in Britain.
전통을 보존하고 환경을 보존해야 된다는 목소리가 점점 커지고 있습니다. 또 대한민국 정부도 아래 국정 기조 가운데 하나를 문화 발전을 했고 그래서 최근에 문화기본법이 만들어졌습니다.
Se-min busily takes notes on the important details. She'll base her report on the contents of the discussion.
So delegates from different countries also voiced their concerns and opinions in terms of what Korea should do in the long run. They wanted Korea not to lose its own color, not to lose its own heritage, as it is still developing, because once destroyed, it's hard to bring it back to its normal state. So as other countries have gone through such difficulties and such concerns in the past, for instance, an Italy representative mentioned that his country had to lose some of their own heritage because they were only blindsided when it came to development. But now, looking back, he says his country and himself kind of regrets their fast developing stage because they now know that they're not able to bring back their own heritage. So that's one of the things that they all voiced their concerns, whether Koreans or international representative, that we should also look out for preserving our own culture.
The first part of the discussion came to an end. During the short 10-minute break, Se-min approaches the panel members she wants to interview.
Hello.
Hello, I'm Ashley. Nice
Hello,
to meet
Ashley.
you.
I'm Justin,
right?
yes.
I was wondering if I can do a brief interview with you when time allows. It doesn't have to be now.
Se-min moves quickly as she has to finish the interview before the second part of the discussion commences.
And you might have touched upon this earlier, but what do you say the Korea should do to maintain the traditional side while consisting and pursuing its modernity?
Any country looks after three big staples. The financial stability, and Korea is doing that. The physical health, the well-being, the hospitals. But really important is the spiritual well-being. That comes from looking after your heritage. So if there's any advice I would give to Korea, is make sure that you put as much emphasis behind the spiritual health of a nation as well as its finance and physical health.
I want to brush upon the part where you mentioned the role of government is also important to maintain the traditional part.
I'm very lucky in Britain. We have 120 years ago, National Trust was set up. We now have 4 million members. We look after more land than anyone else. We can only do that because government gave us powers to do so. And with that power, they're very brave. They said, okay, but we will not influence you.
Great. That's all the questions I have. Thank you. 감사합니다. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Se-min decided to do her second interview with Hwang Sung-hee, who participated in the discussion as a Korean representative.
이 빠른 시간 안에 큰 발전을 할 수 있었던 요소는 문화인으로서 또 어떤 요소 때문에 그렇게 이루어졌다고 생각하시는지.
우리 내수 시장만 가지고는 대중문화의 한계가 있죠. 그래서 우리는 해외 진출을 해서 시장을 넓혀야겠다는 의지가 있었기 때문에 한국의 대중문화가 빠른 시간 내에 발전할 수 있었다고 생각합니다.
물론 많이들 알고 있어요. K-팝 음식 뭐 되게 많이 두루두루 알고 있는데 대표님이 생각하시기엔 어떤 한국의 문화가 조금 더 해외에 알려져야 된다고 생각하시는지, 조금 더 발전이 필요한 부분은?
우리의 전통 문화들, 우리가 갖고 있는 전통적인 가치를 갖고 있는 문화들의 그 높은 예술성도 이제는 우리가 알려야 될 때가 됐다고 생각하거든요.
전통 문화에 한 두어 가지만 이렇게 뽑아주신다면 어떤 게 있을까요? 저희가 접할 수 있는.
네, 전통 문화 중에서 외국인들이 관심을 갖는 건 우리의 우선 고궁이라든가 이런 것에서 느끼는 한국의 오래된 건축의 아름다움, 또 서예, 뭐 도자기 이런 것들도 세계적으로 내세울 만한 것들인데 아직은 그렇게 세계적으로 알려져 있지 않잖아요. 중국과 일본하고 다른 우리의 전통 문화적인 가치를 알려야 될 때라고 생각해요.
말씀 감사합니다. 네. 감사합니다. After sharing some of those opinions and insights, I was able to narrow down some of the candidates for my interviews. And a representative from England was one of them because he had an interesting insight as to what the government's role is in terms of preserving the heritage that Korea has. And I also needed to get an insight from a Korean, from Koreans' perspective. Although it is an international forum where they discuss matters related to cultural affairs internationally, because it is held in Korea and is hosted by the nation, I wanted to hear what Korea had to offer to the table. So I've contacted them and held a brief interviews with them as well.
The second round of discussions began. From the preservation of the native culture to the fusion of culture and other sectors, various topics were broached. However, cultural communication via social networking sites and YouTube was by far the hottest topic. They talked in depth about whether social media, which is changing at such a fast pace, is a good medium for promoting culture.
But because I was rude enough to laugh at something they posted at dinner, it is their act of communication, it's their act of freedom, it's their act of information and knowledge.
And when they came to the museum and we were just showing them one wing, the amount of Instagrams that were sent, I mean, these are things that will only increase their curiosity.
The thing I like most about Korean is your sense of timing, your punctuality.
That afternoon, Se-min is back at the office. She has started organizing the information she collected and began thinking about how she'll write her story. Arirang TV has been reporting on the Culture Communication Forum every year. This year, Se-min wants to approach it from a different angle. She also has to make an appearance on Wednesday's Korea Today to report on the Culture Communication Forum.
So I'll be talking about their concerns as they have voiced it during the meeting. 그런 거 얘기하고 한국이 갖고 있는 cultural strength가 왜 여기까지 어떻게 끌고 왔는지에 대한 얘기를 하거든요.
Okay, so that's the central point of your package. I think maybe you could talk about, after you come back from your package, maybe you could talk about some of the things that they experienced.
Se-min finished organizing her report. Now she has to make a 3-minute video. She starts editing the material from the first day tours of the historical palace and museum and the last day of the discussion.
70s and the Olympics. So you had a relative.
얘기하셔서 스튜디오에서 하는 걸로 하고, 근데 스튜디오에서 얘기만 하면 재미없으니까
영상 같은 거 찾는 게 나을
좋을 것 같아요. 그래야지 이렇게 준비할 시간도 있고.
It was definitely a meaningful event in terms of promoting Korean culture, and the opinions of the influential people from various countries were interesting. But Se-min thinks there's one thing that could be improved.
Looking back, I think it would have been fuller had the discussions been divided into two parts. One in the beginning stage and one in the conclusion stage and wrapping up stage. Because listening to delegates, I wanted to know a little bit about what they had thought, what they had in mind before they started taking a tour in the nation. Because they kept saying that it changed their perspective of Korea, that they now have different image of Korea after taking a tour. I just wanted to get a sense of their idea as to where they come from and what they had in mind about Korea, of Korea, before they got to know the nation. So having two discussions might have been a little more interesting, I guess, in my perspective, if I were to cover this story again.
It's the morning of Se-min's appearance on Korea Today. Before the program begins, she seeks advice about the opening and closing from one of the hosts, Shin-ju.
국가 이미지니까.
이런 것들이 결국 국가 경쟁력으로 이어지니까 이런 좋은 impression을 가져갔으면 좋겠다라고 말했다 뭐 이런 식으로 좀. 근데 이제는 culture와 사람이 어떤 한 나라를 represent하게 되고 그게 국가 경쟁력이 된 거니까 이제 이런 이미지를 가져갔으면 좋겠다라는 걸 자기가 I think you have to explain. Okay.
This is Se-min's third appearance in the Korea Today studio. The opening and closing used in the studio are different from the contents of the story, so she often seeks the advice of those around her. The studio is bustling with activity in preparation for the morning show. Se-min stands in one corner and goes over her script.
The Korean government, a similar forum where different nationalities discuss.
The show finally begins.
Hello and welcome to Korea Today on this rainy Wednesday morning. I'm Oh Jin-ju alongside Kim Min-jung and Kim Young.
While the first story airs, Se-min begins preparing for her segment on another set inside the studio. It is now Se-min's turn.
To further promote Korean culture and to have a better understanding of other cultures around the globe, an annual forum was held here in Seoul in which cultural experts and officials from the G20 nations took part. Good morning, Se-min.
Morning, Chin-ju. Yes, the Culture Communication Forum, or the CCF, have kicked off early this week on Sunday and has closed and has ended as of yesterday on Tuesday. Convergence of different cultures. Some 16 representatives from G20.
The cultural personnel who attended this year's Culture Communication Forum spoke highly of the event and said that Korean tradition is being well preserved. But they did express concern that the fast pace of development is having a negative effect on traditional culture.
Korea.
So, Se-min, you followed the 3-day forum.
The Culture Communication Forum 2014, attended by a great number of cultural leaders from around the world. Reporter Shin Se-min did her best covering the event. We hope it was a meaningful experience for her.
Well, today we are going to have two guests. They are both economic professors, one from Seoul National University and the other from Kyung University, and they are very well-known professors, so I am looking forward to today's discussion.
Korean economy has barely escaped from the IMF crisis. How can you make the economic community here? The labor policy is not that favorable to them.
The global economy is on the rocks at the news that Greece is once again telecommunication in technology. There has been much progress. Economic relationship between Korea and Middle East countries has been very special.
예, 영어로 토론을 해야 되는데 우리말로 강의를 하다가 영어로 토론을 하려니까 좀 신경도 쓰이고요. 많이 좀 읽어봐야 되네요. 예, 원고 준비한 거 지금 읽어보겠습니다. 근데 읽어볼 때마다 좀 고치게 되고 그러네요. 글쎄 우리 경제가 지금 상당히 어려운 상태인데 정부가 경제를 살리겠다고 아주 강한 의지를 보이면서 여러 가지 정책을 내놓고 있는데 그런 정책들이 정말 올바른 정책인가 또 어떤 효과가 있을 것인가 만약에 보완점이 있다면 어떻게 보완해야 될 것인가 그런 토론을 할 예정입니다.
Thanks for tuning in and welcome to Upfront. I'm Nahyun Kyung.
Hello, I'm Yu Jong-soo. It has been about a month since Park Geun-hye administration's second economic team was established and announced its first policy to boost the domestic economy.
Minister Choi Kyung-hwan announced that we'll pump the money and we'll ease the regulations.
Current economic situation in Korea, definitely the government should do something, but it requires more considerations, more preparation.
Can you please elaborate the issues that you concern on this issue?
I'm not opposing to this is clearly.
In fact, the regulation is very important.
Well, additional measures are expected to be rolled out in the coming months, so we will have to keep our eyes on development. But thank you very much, both of you, for coming into the studio and sharing your thoughts with us. And that's all we have for this edition of Upfront.
MCL이 아주 자유로운 분위기, 토론 분위기를 조성을 해서요. 하고 싶은 얘기 편안하게 잘 했습니다. 특히 이제 신 교수님이 잘 말씀해 주시고 서로 공감도 하고 서로 의견도 교환하면서 아는 걸 배우면서 어떤 좋은 어떤 결론을 만들어가는 그런 토론이 아니었나 이런 생각이 들었습니다. 좋은 프로그램이고 잘 참석했다고 생각이 듭니다.
국책연구원장님들 나오신다고 해서 개인적으로 아는 분들이 많아서 이분들이 스튜디오에 나오는 줄 알고 저는 전화로 연결되는 줄 알고 그분들이 이제 뭐 말하는 것들 내용을 해서 거기는 좀 제가 생각이 다른 게 있었는데 질문을 하려고 했는데 그거는 못했고 그렇지만 오늘 그 메인 그 디스커션에서는 총장님하고 같은 의견 또 거의 큰 차이가 없이 다 같은 의견이 있어서 많이 배우고 좋은 시간 가졌습니다.